something magical about a parade. Little kids and big lemonade. Grown-ups having the best time of their lives. There's magic in all the things you can do. And when you're done and you think you're all through, you turn around and then there's more than you ever dreamed of. The magic of Disney. Magic of Disney. Magic of Walt Disney. Magic of Disney. Magic of Walt Disney. Magic, it's magic. Magic of Walt Disney. Magic of Walt Disney. Magic, it's magic. Magic, it's magic.
Walt Disney World is a tribute to the philosophy and the life of Walter Elias Disney, and to the talents, the dedication, and the loyalty of the entire Disney organization that made Walt Disney's dream come true. May Walt Disney World bring joy and inspiration and new knowledge to all who come to this happy place. A magic kingdom where the young at heart of all ages can laugh and play and learn together. Dedicated this 25th day of October, 1971.
Happy birthday, Disney World. A very, very happy 10th anniversary, my dear friends Mickey and all the gang.
No, I am not a shortstop for the New York Yankees. My name is Mel Torme, and I sing a lot at Disney World, where I like making long stops. So it's a pleasure to be able to wish Disney World a very happy 10th anniversary. On the
10 years ago, on October 1st, 1971, Walt Disney World opened its doors to a small gathering of 10,000 smiling faces. An expert on Wall Street said, Disney has really gone and blown it this time. Wall Street had no doubt lost sight of the 10 years prior, during which, in a kingdom far away, sat the man who had heard it all before. The Disneyland folly, the Hollywood spectacular failure. Walt had a new vision. A vision of a world so vast it would extend ad infinitum beyond the gates of a Disneyland Magic Kingdom. A world filled with resorts and sports, recreation and entertainment for everyone. A world that would eventually include a showplace of tomorrow, filled with futuristic concepts and technologies from nations everywhere. A world so vast it would be a complete yet perpetually growing vacation destination, because all the Disney dreams and ideas of a lifetime would be the subjects of its creation. That was Walt's dream, and Central Florida was an integral part of it.
As you can see on this map, we have a perfect location in Florida, almost in the very center of the state. In fact, we selected this site because it's so easy for tourists and Florida residents to get here by automobile. Now, in larger scale on this map, our Florida land is located partly in Orange County and Osceola County, between the cities of Orlando and Kissimmee.
Kissimmee, Kissimmee. Walt's secret agents couldn't even pronounce the name back in April of 1964. And the boys in Kissimmee didn't cotton to no strangers barging in and buying up their pastures nohow. But the business community in neighboring Orlando would have welcomed those city slickers had they only known. Orlando was a young, growing city with a certain economic base already established in tourism at that time.
The community had gone through a slump in their main economic base, which was the Martin Company and related firms in the space program and electronics industry. And so we had been endeavoring to find a gimmick or some type of stimulus that would bring tourist business into the area. We were getting tired of sitting and looking at the cars streaming down I-4 by the millions to Miami and all that money passing by and none of it filtering into Orlando.
Well, Orlando was a relatively small town. It had a pretty good tourist trade, pretty good agricultural business.
Orlando was a peculiar town in those days. It was very parochial. It's still parochial. But you had two leaders in the community, Billy Dial and Martin Anderson. And when you had problems, you go to one or two of those, and they knew who to talk to and how things could be gotten completed.
But we had no tourism, and so the economy was good, but well, in the mid-60s, because of industrial activity, the economy was good, but we still needed that third leg, which was tourism.
Well, we were doing all right for the times, I suppose. We weren't making any big headway.
The truth is, Florida Cypress Gardens, near the neighboring city of Winter Haven, was at the center of Central Florida tourism and had been since 1936.
Roy always kidded me about the pretty girls.
Yes, and Roy Disney, since before the opening of Disneyland, kidded founder Dick Pope about luring 3,500 visitors a day to the middle of nowhere just to see a bunch of pretty girls. But Roy didn't clue his old friend when a mystery industry appeared on the Central Florida horizon. Martin Anderson and Billy Dial didn't know either, nor did Carl Langford or Ed Prizer. No one sniffed the magic in the air. Paul Hellowell, an attorney, and Roy Hawkins, a real estate consultant, both from Miami, were buying up huge quantities of swamp acreage in the southwest end of Orlando. Who they were representing was anybody's guess, and everybody's guess. It was Douglas, Lockheed, or Boeing. Then it was a nuclear plant. Hercules Powder Company, Howard Hughes, or Rockefeller had struck oil. Ford Motor Company was buying this property. They needed the land to feed all their Mustangs. Someone said Leisure World, then Disneyland. Disneyland.
Well, those were really days. Well, I wrote a lot about it because you can well imagine the interest, for one thing. Hercules Powder Company always upset a lot of people. I don't know. Nuclear plant over on the St. Johns River in Orange County section, on this side of the river in Orange County, attracted a lot of attention. People thought there might be dirty industry involved. If you wanted to get your name in the paper, you could have been an industry, and we found your name and we'd put it in there. And I just find it incredulous that Martin Anderson didn't know it was going to be Walt Disney World, but he says that he didn't.
I was dumb as hell. I didn't believe it.
Billy Dial introduced him to Hellowell and Hawkins, who visited Anderson's office on numerous occasions.
Oh, no, I didn't trust him. I didn't pay a lot of attention to him, you know.
Why was that?
Why? Well, you know, I was sitting there, the only publisher in town, guys coming and going all the time with all sorts of propositions and deals, you know, and they go see Martin Anderson. Well, I had an open door. I talked to anybody. I wasted a lot of time out of the way.
What did they want from you?
Nothing. They wanted, they were rather vague in what they were trying to do. I think they were afraid to give me any information, and I was afraid they were going to ask me to print something.
Convinced the better interest of Central Florida was at stake, Anderson did print something. And his old friend Billy Dial went so far as to assist in the land acquisition.
There's a man by the name of Bill Fairchild, who now dead, that was president of the First National Bank of Winter Garden. And he had a piece on the perimeter. It wasn't absolutely essential, but it was desirable. And so they offered him we offered him $1,000 an acre, and he wouldn't take it. And so that was the extent of my authority. Excuse me. Came back, and they finally said, well, go back out and offer him $2,000. Up to $2,000. We got to $2,000, he still wouldn't sell. I said, Bill, why won't you sell? He said, well, what would I do with my cows? I said, well, how many cows you got out there? He says, 38. I said, well, at $2,000 an acre, you could hold a barbecue. But he died still owning the property.
Another 40 acres right in the middle of the property. The owner just wouldn't sell. This time, Anderson sent them to a local attorney, Martin Siegel.
The only clue they had to the man, I never got the man's name, was that he liked Bear Bryant, the Alabama football coach. And it so happens that Martin Siegel knows Bear Bryant. So they told Siegel that, and that's all he needed. You know, anybody who's a fan of Bear Bryant, you know, Christ, you can't stop him when he starts talking. So Siegel went out and just chatting with him, you know, and he said, I understand you're a friend of my old pal, Bear Bryant. You think he's going to win Saturday, you know? And hell, it was made.
A stockbroker in California by the name of Dick Holacek, who got word from a Disney official who had an account with him that this was coming long before we got to the announcement stage. And so Dick flew over and went to the Sun Empire real estate office in Kissimmee and said, I want to buy anything I can out there in a certain area of town. And so before he had finished on that day, Dick had bought $500,000 worth of property, and he had swung it on $10,000 worth of options, which he couldn't pay for because he didn't have the money. So he jumped back in the plane, flew back to California, borrowed the $10,000 from his friends and a mortgage on his house, then came back and picked up the options. And a couple months later, he sold the whole package for $1.3 million cash.
Big money was changing hands. Charlie was tracking rumors, and Bob Foster, mastermind behind the land acquisition scheme, was planting them.
We had, from the local newspapers that we had subscribed to and were receiving back in the coast, we knew the name Charlie Wadsworth very well. And what a fine job Charlie would do in ferreting out difficult news issues. And in town on a couple occasions, comment was that Charlie was going to be coming in, and they would tuck me away to avoid that confrontation. In departing, I would go to Seattle, go to Kansas City, and down to Wichita to visit my mother. The only way you could get to Wichita from here was to go through St. Louis. So I would be very obvious about purchasing an airline ticket to St. Louis. And in a few weeks, the rumor was out that it was McDonnell Aircraft that was interested in the property.
On Sunday, October 17th, Emily Bavar, editor of the Florida magazine Orlando Sentinel, broke the identity of the mystery industry. No one believed her. By Thursday, October 21st, they believed her.
Well, I was on a junket to California. Mr. Anderson, editor and publisher of the Sentinel, had been invited and couldn't go and asked me to go in his place. So it was not an assignment. It was a trip in celebration of Disneyland's 10th anniversary. And I was one of several Central Florida reporters who was out there at the time. And we were ushered into Mr. Disney's office and told we could ask questions. And when it came my turn, I asked him if he was the one who was buying these 30,000 acres in Central Florida. And it stunned him so that it made me think maybe he was. Well, he said, no, I'm not buying any property out there. He said, that would be no place to put a park. He said, your average mean rainfall, whatever the number was, he knew. And he called up Orlando, Central Florida, which was unusual because nobody at the time had really ever heard of Orlando. Mm-hmm. And he knew exactly where it was. He knew how many tourists were here every year, how much it rained all summer. He knew entirely too much about the area not to have had a reason to. No, I didn't believe him. He wasn't a very good liar.
And a girl reporter like that we didn't even know she was there. I didn't see.
Girl reporter.
A girl reporter unravels the identity of Charlie's mystery industry. And how did Charlie feel?
Like going out and getting drunk.
On Monday, November 15th, 1965, at the Orlando Cherry Plaza Hotel, Walt and Roy Disney, with Florida's Governor Hayden Burns, made Emily Bavar's revelation official.
I don't think you mentioned the amount of money, the initial investment.
That's a heck of a lot.
That would indicate the size of this project.
Well, there was a time in my life I didn't think there was that much money. You know? But, well, you see, the initial stage here has to top what we have, or at least be the equivalent of what we have now in California. And there's 54 million in Disneyland now, another 20 million this year. So we're going to have to start somewhere around there. Now, of course, that doesn't include the other facilities, the hotels and the things around it. Now, when you begin to put all those together, it's going to be well over 100 million plus, at least. But my big brother says we can do it. He's the money man.
On 27,000 acres in southwest Orlando, purchased from more than 100 property owners at a total cost of $5.5 million, Walt Disney was going to build the world's largest tourist attraction.
It's indescribable. It was such a glorious and pleasant shock that I think it shook not only every resident of the state, but many of the annual visitors.
Here it comes, just like gold showering from the skies on us. Bill Amadon, who was chairman of the Tourist Commission, walked into Tom Brownlee's office in the Chamber of Commerce on the day the announcement was printed in the paper and slapped the paper on Tom Brownlee's desk and said, "Mission accomplished. May I be discharged now."
Show me a mayor in the United States of America that wouldn't just love to have Walt Disney World sitting on his doorstep as a neighbor. And there is no such man that wouldn't like that.
That was bigger than Christmas. It was terrific, and it's been rolling ever since. It's just a snowball going downhill.
When the announcement was made, well, I think that 95% of this county was thrilled to death. Perhaps a few of the old-timers weren't, and that's natural. They don't want to change. But my reaction was, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to Florida.
I said, anyone who's going to spend $100 million anywhere near me is good.
Well, everybody was dancing in the streets. They thought it was the greatest thing that had happened in Orlando since sliced bread.
But Walt and Roy said with no uncertainty that there will be no Disney in Central Florida without the necessary legislative approval. Highways, taxes, zoning, building codes, water management, fire protection.
Went on to point out that this legislative program we felt was something that we could ask in fairness. We're coming to Florida. We want to be a good citizen of Florida. We're not asking for any big favors or any tax situations. And Mr. Tatum, I thought, outlined very well our demands. And I use that word quite with softness.
There was a great drainage problem. It required the establishment of a government entity, the Reedy Creek Development Corporation, not just for Disney, but because this area encompassed many other lands outside of the boundaries of Disney.
Well, the Disney people were insistent that they wanted to be able to control the environment in which they would have the theme park and their total acreage. And in order to do this, they wanted to create cities and improvement districts, and this was entirely new to us. In fact, I think it was pretty new anywhere. And I think the county was taken aback at first. We wanted them here, but we were a little shaken by the degree of self-control that they wanted. In the negotiations, it became a little heated because we were trying to do this within a time frame. The legislation had to get to the legislature at the proper moment. It was a hard-fought negotiation over some of the terms of the legislation. They wanted it to suit the county commissioners, and ultimately I think it did.
3 proposed acts totaling 481 pages were presented to the legislators.
I took a number of Disney officials one day in to visit with Senator Pope, who was the president, for the purpose of them explaining to him what this was all about. And they started to explain. And all of a sudden, he interrupted them. And he turned to me and he said, "J.J., have you studied these bills?" And I said, "Yes, I have." Then he asked what to me was the important question. "Do you think this is good for Florida?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." He said, "Gentlemen, that's all I need to know." And the Senate voted 100% as a result of Earl Pope's recommendations. In the House, we only had 4 or 5 dissenting votes, most of them out of Miami. I wouldn't know why, but...
On December 15th, 1966, tragic news blitzed the media, and cartoon editorials described the sorrow that was felt by an entire nation.
This is Beach Rogers in the KFWB newsroom. We have a bulletin from Burbank, which is going to sadden the entire world. Walt Disney, the man who built an entertainment empire on a cartoon character, has died today at the age of 65. Of course, he was the creator of Mickey Mouse, the beloved cartoon characters, and Disneyland. Walt Disney, dead at the age of 65 this morning. We'll have more details at 10:55.
The one thing about the Walt Disney World, from then to this day, has been its leadership. And it's Walt dying and power passing through the family, through the hands, and through everything that was so prepared that, as I said, you really wouldn't know he died unless it's a fact for sure, but the way the operation has gone on and the capability of these people.
Well, through the years, after Walt died in '66, it was a big decision for Roy Disney, who was then the chief executive officer of the company, to say go. And one thing he did know that we knew how to build a theme parks.
We were still not committed to a Florida project. All we said was that we had acquired options on the land and would go ahead if certain plans could materialize and certain things could be accomplished. We had to make a decision almost instantaneously as to whether we would go ahead. And by we, I mean Card Walker and myself, in terms of deciding what to recommend to Roy, because in a very short time after Walt's death was made public, within an hour or two, the press was here asking what was going to happen to the company.
On February 2nd, 1967, Disney executives not only announced that Phase 1 of the Florida project would proceed as planned, but here for the first time, state officials, along with the press, industrial and financial representatives from across the country, were introduced to Walt Disney World Phase 2, Walt's ultimate dream, EPCOT.
Hi, Michael Landon here, to congratulate Walt Disney's World on their 10th anniversary.
Wait, I'm not really Peter Pan. Happy birthday, Walt Disney World. Okay.
While the Lake Buena Vista Preview Center hosted over 1 million curious visitors, the world's biggest construction project was going full steam ahead just a few miles away. General Joe Potter and veteran Disney engineer Admiral Joe Fowler were at the helm.
Well, of course, when you set a deadline and you're dealing in earth, immediately the good Lord puts down a lot of rain.
when we started to build, we expected that the Magic Kingdom would be on the original plain surface of the ground. But we found out from the water table and from our excavation of the lagoon and the problem of sinkholes and the deep layer of mud that goes down 18 and 20 feet sometimes, that we had to modify it. So we took the excavation for the lagoon and built up the surface of the park some 16 feet. And therefore, we put the underground in it, you know, for service and without any problem of underground water. 90% of my trouble was jurisdictional. Arguments among the various unions as to who would do what, because we had a lot of new things. Who'd ever built a monorail before? Was it the ironworkers or the millwrights or what have you?
By modular magic, the rooms of the Contemporary Resort Hotel were inserted into the gigantic 14-story steel frame like drawers in a bureau. A steel frame was erected while 3 miles away, 492 units were assembled and outfitted. Presto, the Polynesian Resort Hotel. Enter locomotives from the Yucatan, monorails from Martin Marietta, boats from Tampa, a sky ride from Switzerland, a carousel from Detroit. The carousel framework was erected 2 inches off target. Tear it down and start again. Disney demanded perfection.
They were doing things with shrubbery, with plants that growers here in Florida just couldn't believe. And they had all their plants in buckets, and if something happened to the plant, they'd just bring in another bucket and replace it.
Less than 6 months before opening, under the direction of Vice President Dick Nunes, enter a team of California reinforcements. Every department from the Disney studio, design, and Disneyland had been rated of every available talent. And the word to those left behind was, if it's Florida on the line, drop everything and heed the call. No time to worry about budgets, memos, or administrative formalities. Just get the job done. Morning meetings were called earlier and earlier, down to 6 a.m. When the executive team finally showed in pajamas with shaving kits in hand, Dick got the message. Meetings were moved to 7 a.m.
I would say that there was never any doubt in my mind that we were going to open on the 1st of October.
The day before the opening. You've never seen such activity in all your life.
We were planting trees around the Contemporary Hotel at midnight before, and guests had already started to arrive. That's the way everything is. You set a deadline, you got to meet it, because the tickets are printed.
An opening dedication ceremony for the 1,057-room Contemporary Resort Hotel came right on schedule. And Bob Hope was right on cue with his clever bag of gags.
But this is the biggest vacation complex entertainment in the world. And to think it all started with a gentle mouse, a bad-tempered duck, and 7 mixed-up dwarfs.
A colorful nighttime luau marked the grand opening of the Polynesian Resort Hotel. A month-long celebration was underway, and thousands of jubilant guests lost themselves to the fun and fantasy of the festivities. Fort Wilderness, Circle Vision, Flight to the Moon, and the first Disney Professional Golf Championship followed later in 1971. It was the first day after Thanksgiving that same year. 50,000 people stormed the Magic Kingdom. At Christmas time, attendance climbed to almost 70,000 per day. Disney boosted the number of employees up to 10,000. No vacancy signs shot up all over town. Central Florida and Disney were literally basking in the national spotlight.
They made a projection that 18,000 rooms were needed. Well, there were, at the time Disney came in, about 4,800 rooms. Well, it was clear to see there was a fortune to be made if somebody would put in that extra 13,000 rooms. So about 100 different people all at once decided they would put the rooms in. And so when all the plans were through and all the permits were obtained and all the construction had started, everyone added this up, and 31,000 rooms were in the process of being built. This construction boom at Disney and in the surrounding areas, of course, brought hordes of workers in. I think something like 16,000 at the peak. And then they needed service industries and they needed homes. So the vast subdivisions opened up in Seminole County, and apartments went up by the thousands, and condominiums came into the area for the first time. But everything was predicated on the greatest maximum activity and the greatest amount of spending. And of course, all the projections were way over the mark. As soon as the gasoline shortage came with the Mideastern crisis of 1973, and suddenly for a time the tourist traffic to the area dwindled away, then there was a just complete turnaround of sentiment, and there was panic.
Grandiose projects like Hurricane World, World Peace Exposition, Roy Rogers, Marco Polo, and Bible World died, in most cases, before they were ever born. Builders were loaded with inventories they couldn't move. Bankers were stuck with millions in loans gone sour. Unemployment lines grew.
The doom and gloom became very thick in the area, and this was not finally dispelled until 1975, when some of us began to see the positive factors in the area and to broadcast them.
In January 1975, the opening of Starjets, the Carousel of Progress, and Space Mountain denoted Disney's faith in the economic resurgence.
Boys and girls, we proudly present Space Mountain.
More than 2,000 dignitaries joined in the Tomorrowland celebration. A pageantry of nations with a 2,000-member marching band, thousands of flying doves, 50,000 balloons floating through the sky, and a spectacular daytime fireworks display made it a day to be remembered by one and all.
I spent about 7 hours with the astronauts and the cosmonauts. I rode with General Lex Leonov on the Space Mountain before he'd been adjusted. And I asked him afterwards, he spoke a little English, what he thought about it, and he said, I would rather ride up in the rocket. It was a great ride. That was a great day.
Walt Disney World Village opened. Wedway People Mover moved into Tomorrowland, and more cars were added to the monorail trains. By 1975, the total Disney investment had exceeded $650 million. Disney and Central Florida celebrated the nation's 200th birthday in grand style. Orlando threw a televised world's largest outdoor party. Central Florida was riding high again. Developers began building again. Newcomers found their place among the now prospering attractions bordering I-4. Governor Reuben Askew appeared personally to dedicate the new solar office building at Walt Disney World. Guest celebrities came down in droves. Even President Jimmy Carter appeared, along with thousands of dignitaries from 70 different countries, for an international Chamber of Commerce meeting held in the Vacation Kingdom. Central Florida was world famous, in more ways than one.
I'm very honored and privileged to say happy birthday to Walt Disney World. It's their 10th anniversary, and I feel a part of this wonderful organization because this is my 6th straight year. So happy birthday to Mickey Mouse and all the good people.
Hi, I'm Andrea Evans,
And I'm Wayne Massey, and we're here on our honeymoon.
and we're planning on coming here for all our anniversaries.
So we would like to wish you, Walt Disney World, a happy 10th anniversary.
When Wilbur DJ 105 and Walt Disney World as we both celebrate our 10th birthdays all year long. The Magic Kingdom is celebrating every day with a big new birthday parade, parties, and live musical shows. Listen to VJ 105 for the magic combination to expense-paid vacations at the world's biggest birthday party. Look for details wherever you...
As the 80s approached, the Central Florida growth pace accelerated. A new arrival, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, rolled into Frontierland in the Walt Disney World Magic Kingdom. Just about all the other Central Florida attractions announced aggressive expansion plans. Construction of a new international airport for Orlando was underway. A long-awaited civic center was in the works. By the fall of 1982, it would be ready to host national and international convention business on a competitive scale with the nation's major cities. On October 1st, 1979, a landmark day in the history of Walt Disney World, came the biggest news of the decade. The Disney dream, called EPCOT Center, would come true October 1st, 1982. Card Walker, then president of Walt Disney Productions, had described the project to the International Chamber of Commerce back in 1978.
Today. More than a dozen years ago, Walt Disney outlined his belief that the critical problems facing the world can and will be solved by creative people who are both dreamers and doers. People in universities, in government, in business, and in industry. Even then, he was convinced that solutions to many of our problems already existed and that every day others were emerging from the world's creative centers. He believed that if these ideas could be communicated to people in a way they understood and believed, the decisions they make for tomorrow would provide all of us with a better world in which to live. Walt Disney dreamed of a showplace for the concepts of tomorrow that would never be completed, but always introducing, testing, and demonstrating new ideas, new materials, and new systems. A center for the communication of new concepts that would always be in the state of becoming, giving voice to an optimistic future and confidence in the ingenuity and imagination of free enterprising men and women. He called his dream EPCOT, Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow.
At the same time, Governor Reuben Askew spoke of its potential impact on the state, the nation, and the world.
Because this is the second biggest thing economically that we've ever had in Florida, and the first one was Walt Disney World coming into Florida. So we have to start with the premise that we will have a magnet here, as we have this week in ICC. We have literally brought the rest of the world to us. But here we have an opportunity that is unprecedented to bring together in the World Showcase young people. Now, these young people may well be coming on college credit up to a year, as Cord said. Now, when this thing gets started, you're going to find it's not just the countries who've now committed, But all other countries of the world are going to be here because they've got to be here. They are going to be able to present their case to all the other people in the best type of atmosphere on a permanent basis, where their investment, they won't have to recover their investment in a few days or a few months like the World's Fair for a short period of time, but it'll be continuous. So we have the opportunity in Florida to show that the United States of America is committed to peace. It's committed to finding peaceful solutions to mankind. So what you're going to have young people who are going to get to know each other through private enterprise, not government-sponsored, hopefully with a minimized political tensions, to learn to know each other, and then they're going to go out and form potential cadres of leadership throughout the entire world. And second, in EPCOT, Disney is going to be able to produce some of the most complicated yet basic lessons in human history that people can understand through the tremendous art of communication. So surely we have every right to be pleased economically. We have every right to be pleased from a tremendous sense of pride in the accomplishments and the quality of service that this great organization furnishes. But more than that, we're going to have an opportunity to furnish a forum, hopefully, to try to make this place a better world in which to live. And that's why I've been enthused. That's why I say that this isn't just an undertaking of a private corporation. This is a stimulation and a recommitment to the whole system of private enterprise, without which whatever economy we may have in the industrialized West couldn't be what it is today.
Now it was official. The ultimate Disney dream was just 3 years away from becoming reality. Bulldozers, steamrollers, and a construction cast of thousands moved in, clearing an area more than twice the size of the Magic Kingdom. Monorail beams formed an 8-mile pathway from the Magic Kingdom to the site. As attraction facilities, unprecedented in design and scope, began to take shape, curious visitors would glide through an overview of the process. They would witness structures from right out of the pages of science fiction in actual creation. A mammoth geodesic dome that would tower 180 feet tall above it all, a gateway to the future, and a dramatic introduction to the EPCOT experience. Architectural statements in energy, transportation, communication, and imagination, and pavilions to house the land and the future. On the far side of a spacious man-made lagoon, great nations would be recreated to stand side by side in friendship and peaceful harmony. From a 550-acre foundation would spring a vast new showplace for the innovations of tomorrow and the nations of today. EPCOT Center, the largest private enterprise construction project in the world, with a workforce that would climb from 1,200 in the beginning to 4,000 by the final year when the powerful dream machine rolls into high gear. Back in the Magic Kingdom on Main Street, USA, a preview center opened to tell the world the 21st century is not far away. It offers a peek at the space-age creativity behind the EPCOT Center scenes. More than 1,800 artists, designers, architects, and engineers are combining their skills into the ultimate creative process called Disney Imagineering. From colorful drawings to intricate scale models, then to complete show models with all the details of every scene filled in, they're bringing to reality the two major themes of EPCOT Center. First, Future World. It will exemplify all of the ideas and innovations of tomorrow. Spectacular new technologies in people-moving systems, in vision and in sound, will be utilized like never before. Disney special effects and the art of audio animation will be perfected beyond the most thrillable imagination. Second, World Showcase, the first permanent international exposition of its kind. Through the creation of shows and attractions, and through the recreation of authentic restaurants, shops, and architectural landmarks, Disney Imagineers are capturing the best of every nation represented in the dream called EPCOT Center. October 1st, 1982. The 21st century begins with the opening of EPCOT Center. And the dream will never end, because there's enough Walt Disney World land to hold all of the dreams and visions of a lifetime.
10 o'clock that morning, it'll be open. And there'd be 10,000 people there, and some joker in Detroit's go right that it's a failure. The next day, there'll be 160,000 people there.
EPCOT's going to have a very beneficial but a tremendous impact on the Central Florida area. More jobs, more people, more things to do, more things doing.
Well, of course, I think EPCOT Center is going to give us a dimension that we really don't have now. A lot of people drive right down I-4 past us because they think we run a carousel. And I think it's going to take on a dimension of something that more adults are going to want to see. And I think it's going to generate a lot of people that probably without EPCOT Center would never come to Walt Disney World. And once they do, they're going to find that it's a great place and they're going to come back.
Hi, I'm Soupy Sales. Happy birthday, Walt Disney World.
Hello, I'm Susan Powell, Miss America 1981, and I'd like to wish Walt Disney World a happy 10th birthday.
Hi, this is Dick Van Dyke, wishing a very happy 10th birthday to Walt Disney World.
Dreams have been coming true throughout Florida's Disney decade. For the Walt Disney Organization, the dream of creating the most wonderful place in the world is forever being realized. In communities throughout the state, dreams of prosperity have continued to become reality. And for visitors, hundreds of thousands of dreams have come true, making Florida the #1 vacation destination in the nation.
I think it's affected practically everybody in this county. I used to say that I would love to see the day, having been born and raised here and knowing many business people in Kissimmee and St. Cloud and listening to their problems over the years, that I would love to see the day when I could walk down the main streets of Kissimmee and St. Cloud and have the merchants say to me, "JJ, business is great." And I've seen this come about. And it happened as a result of Disney. There's just no other reason.
What Disney did was that the attitude changes that caused in the people. The happy faces you see leaving Disney World, you go in now, or since it came in, you go into a store or any kind of a store or a place, have a good day, enjoy yourself. The friendliness, that's something that all the money Disney has can't buy unless it's there. You know, if you feel that way, and I think that, in my own personal opinion, has been the biggest contribution it's made, and simply because you can't buy it.
And I just feel a responsibility to the public when I go into this thing, that we must control that. And when they come into this so-called world, when they come into this world, then we will take the blame for what goes on. Now that's the thing behind it. Also, to keep an operation like Disneyland going, we have to pour it in there. It's what I call keeping a show on the road. You just have to keep throwing it in. You can't sit back and let it ride. You have to keep throwing it in. Now, that's been our policy all our lives. My brother and I have done that, and that is what has built our organization.
You mean new attractions?
Well, no, not new attractions, but keeping it staffed properly. You know, never letting your personnel get sloppy. Never let them be unfriendly. I mean, now that can reflect itself in the peripheral things.
The happy expectations which started the relationship between Walt Disney World and the Central Florida community, indeed the whole state of Florida, have set the standards for a friendship which has remained strong throughout the years. From Walt Disney World to all our Florida friends, we say thanks. You've been a good friend since the beginning of the world. Thanks, Florida.